Okay, welcome to the Washington Capitals 2022 draft recap. I was very curious to see what the Capitals would do. We're just going to get right into it because they drafted Ivan Miroshnichenko at 20. That's my feel-good pick of the entire draft. That's higher than I had him ranked. That's higher than where he was ranked on average. That is a really interesting pick. Him above Danila Yurov honestly doesn't surprise me, but I also imagine that there's a clean bill of health for Ivan Miroshnichenko or something promising enough where the Capitals are confident. I had a feeling that they would go with a Russian this year. I just didn't think it would be Ivan Miroshnichenko. But I think Miroshnichenko got a bit of a bad rep based on his play that he did have this year. I mean, he wasn't phenomenal at the VHL level, but you did see the individual traits that I think make him kind of interesting. Like, he's really strong on his feet for a guy like him. A really good shooter, both in terms of a one-timer and open ice shooting. I would like him to be a player who can maybe see the ice a little bit better, work off of his line mates a little bit better, but there's a lot of things that Miroshnichenko brought that was pretty good to the game in the VHL. I tracked a few games of him because I struggled to sort of see what I thought about him. But he did drive good offensive threat metrics, really efficient offensive transition player in okay workloads, not huge, but he drove good offensive data. At the VHL level, driving those kinds of results are worth noting. So I thought Miroshnichenko, especially for a kid who up to when he stopped playing this year probably was dealing with some kind of symptomatic issue that led to his cancer diagnosis. Maybe that's what factored in at the beginning of the year. But I thought he played better than some people were saying. And at 20, it's a swing, but I don't know, you're the Washington Capitals, right? You may as well, right? Just go for the Russian that everybody thought was a top 5 pick going into the season, who played pretty well at the men's league level in Russia this year. Not spectacular, but played pretty well. And I think there's some traits there that could translate for him. At 37, they drafted Ryan Chesley. Now, I kind of struggled with Chesley all year long. His data lags behind pretty much every NTDP defenseman I saw and tracked, especially. Tyler Duke put up significantly better results than Chesley, but Chesley's more physical. Chesley has, a bit more of a fluid stride rather than needing to sort of work hard to get the results he gets. Not that Chesley doesn't work hard, but I'm saying Tyler Duke really, really, really has to give her to get what he gets, which I love, but Ryan Chesley probably to NHL teams is the better idea of an NHL prospect. But, he's raw, I think. I watch him and I'm going, how is this guy not scoring more based on the skill and sort of the ability to carve through defenses that I've seen here and there. But when it comes to puck distribution and closing out defensive breakouts and all of those things, I really struggled to see Chesley as a player that didn't have a long way to go. At 37, I thought you could have done a lot better. Again, Lane Hudson blows Ryan Chesley out of the water in a lot of analytical categories for me. But you know what? I feel like Chesley could still be, a minutes-eating guy in the lineup. There's nothing that says he can't. He's got a well-rounded game of skill and footwork and physicality and everything that just needs to sort of solidify. And we'll see what happens over the next few years. I imagine he's a guy where, I hope he's not a guy where he goes to college for 1 year and then that's it. I'd like to see a bit of a longer runway for him to see where he can go. But I don't know. Chesley at 37 was a bit high for me, but I totally understand why he would go there. But then the Washington Capitals completely outdid themselves by drafting Alexander Suzdalev at 70 and then Ludwig Persson at 85. I really, really like Suzdalev. I think he's one of these guys where he's really, really good, except for things that are really key. Getting his feet going and getting some speed generated is a key weakness that really limited him in the Allsvenskan game I watched of him. At the junior level, he's got the hands and the creativity to do whatever he wants, really. Get around guys, create space for himself. He found line mates really, really well. Drove a lot of my analytics really well as well. And this includes the one Allsvenskan game that I watched. Super, super efficient offensive transition player in huge workloads. Tons of passes. Pretty decent passing the puck. Not spectacular, but decent. He sits 14th. He's 4th in shot assists for me. Just a really, really interesting offensive player who I think has a lot of upside to work with if his feet can take a few steps over the next few years. Ludwig Persson at 85, again, drove really interesting data. A guy who I felt I was expecting a lot more of coming into the season and didn't get what I was looking for, but still put up good data in terms of getting into the right positions and making plays in the offensive zone. I really thought that he might have been a guy where, he's a puck transporter or an offensive quarterback. He did have that instinct in the junior level last year. This year, when I watched him, especially at the SHL level, it just seemed like his hands weren't quite where they need to be in terms of puck control and managing the puck. But he, in the SHL, I found that his pace and his speed kind of helped him defensively. He's a pretty big guy. So I think if you get a 200-foot guy who can get to the net offensively but chip in defensively more than anything, and you have other guys to transport the puck, Persson, you could have done much, much worse at 85. Like, again, going back to Dallas, I would have thought Ludwig Persson would have been a guy that they took instead of George Fagaris 2 picks earlier. But, and I would have pushed for Persson quite a bit harder. But, you can only do so much, and Persson isn't perfect, but he's a player that I think was a really nice pickup for Washington. At 149, they picked Jake Carabella. He's a guy where I'm going, okay, I've seen him a bit over the course of the year with Guelph. Didn't really stand out to me in any way. Like, I can see him being a good CHL player, goes to the AHL for a while and is kind of fine. Like, I don't know. I can't tell you what Carabella's key strength is. I can't really tell you if he's got any weaknesses because he's he's a good OHL player. Where will he go? I don't know if Washington has a plan of like what they kind of want out of him, but also it's 149th overall. We're getting into the weeds here quite a bit. Maybe there's something there. I'm not holding my breath. He's not one of these guys where I'm going, I can't believe this guy was available at 149. Ryan Hofer was a guy who I had never seen before going into this season. Look, I wrote some notes on him. The track record for twice undrafted WHLers that don't score a point per game becoming NHL talents is not great. The Capitals drafted Brett Leeson, and he's played in the NHL a little bit, but, And, they didn't draft Ryan Hofer in the second round, but it's still the same kind of issue. And Leeson down the stretch was very, very far from the player he was in the first half in this draft season. I think with Hofer, though, he's big, but pretty light for a 6'3" human being. I think there's a good meat and potatoes hockey game there from him, though. Like, it's not flashy, but, he gets to the net without the puck a lot. He has intriguing skill sort of in rush offense situations, I find, changing angles, pulling pucks around, and he has these moments of doing that quite well. His wrist shot is on the better side of average, but I feel like the pace of his game, his ability to use sort of agility and his feet to sort of evade pressure, and his ability to generate speed, I think really limit him in terms of his output. I think maybe there's a guy here down the lineup, but I don't know about the likelihood of that personally with Hofer, especially because he's a twice undrafted player that will have either one more year in the WHL or he's going straight to the AHL, and we'll see what happens. David Gucciardi, though, I thought he would get drafted last year, and I'm pleasantly surprised to see him drafted this year. He's a guy who was last year, I tracked a lot of him because, again, similar to Miroshnichenko, I wasn't quite sure what I was seeing. He's a guy where I'm going, okay, like last year, and this is last year, I'm going, okay, in isolated moments, he's one of the more fun and skilled offensive defensemen out there, but then he just disappears. He'll be out for a shift and just not really doing much. He'll throw the puck away a bunch of times. He will play very timidly and sort of not pressure guys defensively. And I think he's still kind of learning those lessons in college, and I think you can leave him there for a few more years and see where he goes. But I don't know. I with Gucciardi, he's a guy where I saw some moments of really, really high upside and really impressive talent, and then a whole bunch of what's happening. So we'll see if that irons itself out over time, but I'm glad that he got drafted. Again, I think worse players got drafted this year. I think worse players got drafted last year. So we'll see what happens with him. He's going to probably take another 2 or 3 years in college to continue fixing the stuff, but the upside is there with Gucciardi. So that's it, relatively quick for the Washington Capitals. So for them, if I go over to my sandbox here, we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to give the Washington Capitals a 1D. I really liked the swing on Miroshnichenko. I think at 20, assuming he has a clean bill of health, I think you're laughing. I didn't hate the Ryan Chesley pick at 37, but I wouldn't have done it, but I get why they did it, and they could end up with maybe a second or third pair 200-foot all situations guy who's not super productive, but they have Nick Jensen already on the team, and maybe there's a Nick Jensen style defenseman there in Ryan Chesley. Alex Sisdalov and Ludwig Persson, though, I think are the great value picks here. Those are two guys where if I was at a draft table and at 70 and 85, these guys were on the board, and there was people going, yeah, we should get these guys, and even if they're not specifically the players that I would have wanted, I'm going, okay, yeah, you know what? Let's go for these guys. I think Persson was one of the best players, or Sisdalov was one of the best players available when he got drafted for me. 49th. So who was, Adam Ingram I had ranked a little bit higher, Mats Lindgren a little bit higher, but other than that, Gradinin, and maybe some guys that went undrafted. Yeah, Tyler Duke was 45, so Sisdalov was one of the best players available for me in that range, and Persson wasn't far back. So I thought Washington did quite well, even if they might have done a little bit better with Carabella or Hofer. But again, who is that player? I don't know. I don't think we know yet. I think with Carabella's pick, the only one I would have been pounding the table for is Gradinin, especially because they had already drafted Miroshnichenko. But whatever, such is life. It doesn't always go your way. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, and tomorrow's video will be the Anaheim Ducks, or the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, as they should probably go back to, because they just got voted the worst logo in hockey, according to Jay Fresh's audience. So, and frankly, I agree. Anyway, we'll get to that on another day. We'll see you tomorrow for the Anaheim Ducks. All right, bye.